So hello there, and welcome back. If you're listening, thank you so much for listening, and I can't believe it. I say this every single episode. It continues to amaze me, I guess, that this is, I believe this is episode 32 that I am recording today in the Meditation Mind Discord server. Meditation Mind, which is just a wonderful organization that has a strong Reddit and Discord presence. And I feel really privileged to be a part of the Discord community and meditate there almost every day, and have been for a while, and I just really enjoy it. So if you're following along in the book here, then I can tell you that I am reading On the Path, an anthology on the Noble Eightfold Path, drawn from the Pāli Canon by Ṭhānissaro Bhikkhu, an American Buddhist monk widely respected for his translations of Buddhist texts and teachings on meditation and the Dhamma. And again, if you are in the Meditation Mind Discord server and you see the book club channel, then Notes from On the Path is kind of a buried, secret, hidden little thread, I guess is what you would call it. And it's really where I kind of just keep the conversation going. Not really. It's more like, I drop a recording and then, I drop supplementary material. So if I mention something in the episode, maybe a video that I watched that really left an impression on me. Okay, so yeah, Sutta 65. Monks, for anyone who says, in whatever way a person makes karma, that is how it is experienced. There is no living of the holy life. There is no opportunity for the right ending of stress. But for anyone who says, when a person makes karma to be felt in such and such a way, that is how its result is experienced, there is the living of the holy life. There is the opportunity for the right ending of stress. There is the case where a trifling evil act done by a certain individual takes him to hell. There is the case where the very same sort of trifling act done by another individual is experienced in the here and now, and for the most part barely appears for a moment. And I'll just say that I do a lot of commentary here, and you're more than welcome to do commentary with me. I'll just cut your voice out for my podcast. Okay, that is just the nature of my podcast. So I'll just say that I did some research, a little bit more research on this section here. As I mentioned in my last episode, kind of getting into, we're now getting into, we're in right view. And so we're talking about karma now, the kind of cosmological aspects of Buddhism that the West hates. Let me just see if that's another person here. Let's see, or if that's, hello, welcome. Yeah, so at any rate, this may or may not, be a comfortable day of of listening to the reading and following along. But as I kind of did a little bit of research to freshen up, because it's been a minute, this whole section, as was the last reading, is really getting to this idea of, last episode I used the word momentum, and what is karma in Buddhism, and how sometimes the West kind of can get the idea of karma, it kind of has a weird view. I think they might think it's something like reincarnation, which is not what was taught as far as we know. You can think about it like this. If you've been developing your mind, right? If you've been practicing, and when we get to, right view and right effort, and we're on right view, but right effort, right mindfulness, all that good stuff. When you're training the mind and you perform a trifling evil act, it's probably not going to affect you as much. And again, this is where I just really get into the weeds about it, but it's probably not going to affect your mind as much as it were if you've got a lot of momentum going. And I think if I read down further here where it says, he's really getting to this idea of training, right? Of training in this life, of training. Because this is an extension from last week, right? And the section is really talking about what role do we have in this relationship to karma, regardless of what our karmic seeds ripening are. What is our role? Well, we can train. the Eightfold Path is a path of action we can train. All right, Sutta 66, and I'm so sorry if there's anybody on the call who is from this area. I'm sorry if I mispronounce the names, just kind of do my best. Malayasivaka, so sorry if I destroyed that there. There are some contemplatives and Brahmins who are of this doctrine, this view. Whatever an individual feels, pleasure, pain, neither pleasure nor pain, is entirely caused by what was done before. Now, what does Master Gotama say to that? The Buddha. And by the, I'm guessing what he means is I don't know why he did it this way. It's just kind of interesting. He doesn't usually do it this way, but he just has the Buddha quote. So I guess this is where he's now not Gotama. This is the Buddha responding, right, after he's awakened. There are cases where some feelings arise based on bile, i.e. diseases and pains that come from a malfunction of the gallbladder. You yourself should know how some feelings arise based on bile. Even the world is agreed on how some feelings arise based on bile. So any contemplatives and Brahmins who are of the doctrine and view that whatever an individual feels, pleasure, pain, neither pleasure nor pain, is entirely caused by what was done before, slip past what they themselves know, slip past what is agreed on by the world. Therefore, I say that those contemplatives and Brahmins are wrong. And if you did come in after I said this, feel free to unmute if you want to talk, and I'll just cut your voice out. Okay, since this is a podcast. I love this, and this is making me think of, so I coach, and I was talking to someone recently about this, and I love that, we know that there are some bodily sensations or bodily experiences that we have that are going to shape our subjective experience of reality. And this is certainly, true for me. I can get and again, if there's anybody on the call who's more knowledgeable about Buddhism, please let me know if I get any of this wrong. I always like to preface with, I'm not a scholar. I'm just reading this book and commenting, and it's been a long time since I've read the Dharma. It's been like 20 years. So, we can have a headache. We can have a stomach ache. In my case, I can eat too late before I go to bed, and I can have a problem with my stomach. And this can be a part of the fabricated experience, right? This can be a part of phenomena arising. And I remember when I was being trained in how to meditate, for the first time. This would have been like maybe within my first year or two of meditation. And maybe some people in this call or in this server have had a similar instruction. It's definitely a very common, at least in the West, a very common Buddhist instruction in how to practice concentration meditation, which you kind of, sort of need to be able to get down somewhat, before you can kind of move into Vipassana in the Buddhist tradition. Anyway, and so, he's saying, okay, so there's going to be a lot of things that are going to arise as you're sitting here for the next 30 minutes, not moving, and just, following your breath, bringing your attention over and over and over again to your nostrils and your breathing, because this is how we do it in Buddhism, one of the ways that we do it in Buddhism. And so he'll say, you're going to have thoughts that come in. And he says, some of those thoughts are going to be, you can just say to yourself when those thoughts arise, thinking, and then return your attention. So he's going through all these things, and when he gets to feeling, and we're right now, by the way, we're talking in Buddhism, we're talking about the aggregates of form, sight, sound, sense, taste, all those good things. So when he gets to feeling, he says to us, well, there will be internal and external sensory feelings. And this was actually really, really helpful for me because I won't do TMI for you and gross anybody out. I'll just say that because of something that I talk openly about in this podcast, which is how I found Buddhism in my early 20s, is that I had a really, really, really severe eating disorder, just the horrible kind, and that lasted most of my adult life, and really messed up my gut, basically, really messed up my digestion. And I remember thinking at the time, oh, wow, it never really occurred to me that my stomach trouble and my mind was related in any way. And that sometimes what I'm feeling really is just a reaction to something that I ate. I'm really going off the rails. I do this all the time. But, leave it to, as Bhikkhu puts it right here, the student is asking Master Gautama, but the response says the Buddha. So now this is the awakened, right? This is the awakened answer. Look, what do we know? We know that sometimes you have problems with your gut. So then the next one goes on to say, there are cases where some feelings arise based on phlegm, based on internal winds, based on combination of bodily humors, from the change of the seasons, from unevens, out of tune, care of the body, from attacks, from the result of karma. You yourself should know how some feelings arise from the result of karma. Even the world is agreed on how some feelings arise from the result of karma. So any contemplatives and Brahmins who are of the doctrine and view that whatever an individual feels, pleasure, pain, neither pleasure nor pain, is entirely caused by what was done before, slip past what they themselves know, slip past what is agreed on by the world. Therefore, I say that those contemplatives and Brahmins are wrong, and that's SN 36:21. I always say it, this stuff is so out of my depth that I'm just kind of doing the best that I can. But what I think is being said here, and if I'm wrong and I do more research, I always admit it in the thread, is this distinction between, the kind of the bodily sensations and karma ripening. Now, if what I think he's saying is true, and I'll fact check myself for whatever that means, right? Some people don't even think that he existed. So I just won't make any response on any of those things. I'll just say that lots of people have written about it. And so I can, quote unquote, fact check it that way. But I think that what is being said here is, here's my analogy. So I meditate every day. And I meditate, and there are some times where I don't meditate, where I have chronic pain, and quite frankly, where my chronic pain is just really, really bad, and it doesn't feel like it's going to be fruitful. And this is where, if I have this right, then I'm going to try this as an analogy. I can tell when I don't feel good because of something that I ate, or because of something that I watched. Sometimes I admit I really love the horror genre. I'm just going to say it. I love Stephen King, and so I can tell when my mind is really, when my mind is not calm, when my mind is choppy, when my mind is aggravated, when my mind, I think that when we practice, right, when we train our mind, we can start to tease out, we can start to discern when it's what we ate, when it's maybe something that we read or watched, maybe it's a conversation that we had, and when it's karma. And so here's what I think it means. I talk a lot in here about how I have a temper. Not like I beat up people and I'm not like not like that. I just mean, I mean that when some people are threatened, we have the fight, flight, freeze, and there's another one, fawn, I think, response, right, in psychology. And I've always been this way, even as a small child. My mom would tell me stories, about what my temperament was like. And it was always just described as scrappy. If we had chickens, and if the chickens would peck me, I'd kick the chicken in the head when I was a little kid. Now that to my mind is karma. And again, why do I say this? And again, this is where fabrication becomes so complex. And this really, to my mind, I just wrote about this in the Substack. This really is what intersectionality truly, truly, truly means. If you were to take a word from more of like a sociological word. Okay, so I did live in a violent home growing up. Okay, so did I kick the chicken that pecked me because I grew up in a violent home? Did I felt angry a lot as a little. I also felt joy. It wasn't like a think a lot of times in the West, we think anger is like this really negative thing. Like if you're angry, you're also depressed. And that's just, oh dear, that's really simplifying anger. Quite frankly, it's oversimplifying anger. So maybe I should use a different word, passion. Don't take any crap, whatever you want to say about that, right? So is that karma? Well, given that in my life right now, there's really nothing for me to get passionate about. When I wake up and I have my fire, my passion fire raging in my mind, I could blame politics in my country. But my Buddhist practice really tells me that actually, no, that's kind of more my pattern of response to stimuli. I hope I'm not going off the rails too much. I'm going to check the chat to see if I am. So again, it's this, let me see. You had it ready, got it. Yeah, okay, it comes with sense percent. Yeah. Thank you very much. I won't use your name for your anonymity, but thank you. Okay, great. Yeah, it always helps to just like, are you taking this the same way I am? It's always helpful. Yeah, so I'll move on, especially now that I know that somebody on the call is also perceiving it that way. So I know I'm not just maybe making things up. And I'll just finish this before I get into the next sutta here, or is it the same one? Okay, so the top of page 163, Sutta 67. Okay. There are headmen, some contemplatives and Brahmins, who hold a doctrine and view like this. All those who kill living beings experience pain and distress in the here and now. Is this the one that I just read? See, this is what happens, right, when you have stanzas that repeat. Let me just skim this and then I'll take it from the top of there we go. Okay, this is a new one. Okay. Okay, thank you so much. I know, right? This is what happens to me frequently because it's like reading poetry. There are headmen, some contemplatives and Brahmins, who hold a doctrine and view like this. All those who kill living beings experience pain and distress in the here and now. All those who take what is not given, who engage in sexual misconduct, who tell lies, experience pain and distress in the here and now. Now, there is the case where a certain person is seen garlanded and adorned, freshly bathed and groomed, with hair and beard trimmed, enjoying the sensualities of women, as if he were a king. They ask about him, "My good man, what has this man done that he has been garlanded and adorned, as if he were a king?" They answer, "My good man, this man attacked the king's enemy and took his life. The king, gratified with him, rewarded him. That is why he is garlanded and adorned, as if he were a king." Then there is the case where a certain person is seen bound with a stout rope, with his arms pinned tightly against his back, his head shaved, bald, marched to a harsh-sounding drum from street to street, crossroads to crossroads, evicted through the south gate, and beheaded to the south of the city. They ask about him, "My good man, what has this man done that he is bound with stout rope and beheaded to the south of the city?" They answer, "My good man, this man, an enemy of the king, has taken the life of a man or a woman. That is why the rulers, having had him seized, inflicted such a punishment upon him." Now, what do you think, headman? Have you ever seen or heard of such a case? I have seen this, Lord, have heard of it, and will hear of it again in the future. So, headman, when those contemplatives and Brahmins who hold a doctrine and view like this say, "All those who kill living beings experience pain and distress in the here and now," do they speak truthfully or falsely? Falsely, Lord. And those who babble empty falsehood, are they moral or immoral? Immoral, Lord. And those who are immoral and of evil character, are they practicing wrongly or rightly? Wrongly, Lord. And those who are practicing wrongly, do they hold wrong view or right view? Wrong view, Lord. And is it proper to place confidence in those who hold wrong view? No, Lord. Then, headman, there is the case where a certain person is seen garlanded and adorned, as if he were a king. They ask about him, "My good man, what has this man done that he has been garlanded and adorned as if he were a king?" They answer, "My good man, this man attacked the king's enemy and stole a treasure. The king, gratified with him, rewarded him." Then there is the case where a certain person is seen bound with a stout rope and beheaded to the south of the city. They ask about him, "My good man, what has this man done that he is bound with a stout rope and beheaded to the south of the city?" They answer, "My good man, this man, an enemy of the king, has committed a theft, stealing something from a village or a forest." Then there is the case where a certain person is seen garlanded and adorned as if he were a king. They ask about him, "My good man, what has this man done that he has been garlanded and adorned as if he were a king?" They answer, "My good man, this man seduced the wives of the king's enemy." Then there is the case where a certain person is seen bound with a stout rope and beheaded to the south of the city. They ask about him, "My good man, what has this man done that he is bound with a stout rope and beheaded to the south of the city?" They answer, "My good man, this man seduced women and girls of good families." Then there is the case where a certain person is seen garlanded and adorned as if he were a king. They ask about him, "My good man, what has this man done that he has been garlanded and adorned as if he were a king?" They answer, "My good man, this man made the king laugh with a lie." Then there is the case where a certain person is seen bound with a stout rope and beheaded to the south of the city. They ask about him, "My good man, what has this man done that he is bound with a stout rope and beheaded to the south of the city?" They answer, "My good man, this man has brought the aims of a householder or a householder's son to ruin with a lie. That is why the rulers, having had him seized, inflicted such a punishment upon him." Now, what do you think, Hedman? Have you ever seen or heard of such a case? I have seen this, Lord, have heard of it, and will hear of it again. And then, in parentheses, again in the future. So, Hedman, when those contemplatives and Brahmins who hold a doctrine and view like this say, "All those who tell lies experience pain and distress in the here and now," do they speak truthfully or falsely? Is it proper to place confidence in those who hold wrong view? No, Lord. And that's how it ends. And that's from SN 42:13. And I think as I was reading that, I was seeing more writing. So, and I'm just going to read what our guest in here wrote in the chat. It says, "This is a familiar story for many of us. Not always do people appear to suffer for their crimes. And sometimes what would be a crime for someone else is rewarded." Oh my gosh. Thank you so much. Yeah, boy, isn't that just like a beautifully concise, to my view. I agree with you, friend, that that's what I take from this as well. And I think why in Buddhism, the Buddha warned and also warned, his son in earlier sections, why it is so important to be so discerning. And I think, we live in a time where it's more important to be discerning now more than ever. I know there's a really big argument in the United States, depending on what state you live. No, I shouldn't be so flippant about that. Really, it's really a case by case, right? A Homo sapien by, it's a human by human, right? Feeling about it, like, what do we do about cell phones? What do we do about cell phones and young minds? When do we give young people cell phones? When do we let young people have cell phones in schools? And these are arguments that I hear in my professional circle almost every single day. And they're just, I think that these are conversations that are being had all over the world, as we have these powerful, powerful machines in our pockets. At least a lot of people do. And then, of course, if you don't have the means to have one, then the divide between the haves of those machines and the have-nots of those machines is creating an even bigger chasm, to my view. And so this passage right here to me is, and what you just said here in this chat, is a really great thing to remember, I think, for anyone who is maybe noticing about their own behavior that they have a powerful habituation to scrolling their social media feeds. So if anybody on this call or anybody who's listening to this podcast later on has maybe noticed, maybe through their mindful practice, hey, I spend a lot more time on my social media feeds than maybe I really want to be. Maybe I'd rather be spending that time learning how to play an instrument or a sport or planting a garden or just talking to my friends or myself. Right? Whatever. Just no judgment here, right? It's more of like hey, I notice, I think that this is yet another reminder of how we really can't know. We just can't know. We just can't know, right? And we can watch this sentiment that our community member here just pointed out, and that I think is a beautiful kind of summary of what's being said here. And that is why we practice. I mean, I'm not going to say we. I don't like that. That always sounds kind of condescending to me, so I won't say that. That's why I practice. Because it helps me keep my discernment sharp. My discernment sharp. And because I have chosen to follow the Eightfold Path, then it helps me in those times when it's very easy, to get caught up, particularly when it has something to do with something that I care deeply about. Hey, okay, that's great. Oh, I hear you. Wow, right? And it's one of those things where the guest is just talking about how kind of there's a lot of really unwholesome content in the social media sphere, and it can feel really hard to control the feed. How they have, like in the YouTube, they have that, you have that ability to check, I'm not interested in this video, and I do that constantly, and I still just get right. So anyway, I know I kind of taken this off the rails, but yeah, thank you so much for that, and for your contribution in the chat. And yeah, I think it really sums up this sutta really, really beautifully. And I'm going to keep it moving. And so now we're at Sutta 68. Okay. There are 4 kinds of person to be found in the world. Which 4? There is the case where a certain person takes life, takes what is not given, in brackets, steals, engages in sexual misconduct, lies, speaks divisively, speaks harshly, engages in idle chatter, is covetous, malevolent, and holds wrong views. On the breakup of the body, after death, he reappears in a plane of deprivation, a bad destination, a lower realm, hell. Woo, and here's where it comes in, right? Here we go, here comes the cosmology, right? And there is the case where a certain person abstains from taking life, abstains from taking what is not given, is not covetous, not malevolent, and holds right views. On the breakup of the body, after death, he reappears in a good destination, a heavenly world. But there is also the case where a certain person abstains from taking life, abstains from taking what is not given, is not covetous, not malevolent, and holds right views. In brackets, yet, on the breakup of the body after death, he reappears in a plane of deprivation, a bad destination, a lower realm, hell. And then we have ellipses here. Let me turn the metaphorical page. In the case of the person who takes life, brackets, yet, on the breakup of the body after death, reappears in a good destination, a heavenly world. Either earlier he performed fine karma, that is to be felt as pleasant, or later he performed fine karma, that is to be felt as pleasant, or at the time of death he adopted and carried out right views. Because of that, on the breakup of the body, after death, he reappears in a good destination, a heavenly world. But as for the results of taking life, holding wrong views, he will feel them, either right here and now, or later in this lifetime, or following that. Ellipses. And I think I'm just, well, I'll finish the sutta because we have one more passage, and then I'll kind of get to that. Because yeah, this is, we are getting into law of attraction stuff, or at least the ideas that came from Hinduism and Buddhism. We're right in the thick of it, and this will be really cool. Let me just finish this next little passage. In the case of the person who abstains from taking life, but on the breakup of the body after death, reappears in a plane of deprivation, a bad destination, a lower realm, hell. Either earlier he performed evil karma, that is to be felt as painful, or later he performed evil karma, that is to be felt as painful, or at the time of death he adopted and carried out wrong views. Because of that, on the breakup of the body after death, he reappears in a plane of deprivation, a bad destination, a lower realm, hell. But as for the results of abstaining from taking life, holding right views, he will feel them, either right here and now or later, in this lifetime or following that. And that's MN 136. And this really is straight up about the real meaning of karma in Buddhism, that it's really momentum, that there is no self, there is no worlds, there is no grounds, there's momentum. And I think the reason why, and I'll just check the chat, make sure, okay. And I think the reason why, that's their name, Abraham Hicks, yes. I think the reason why their work with playing, I don't like the word, they love the word play, so I'm going to use their word, playing with the idea of the law of attraction. It is also this idea of momentum. I think where I get a little bit, I want to say bent out, but I think where it's really important to kind of appreciate about this idea of momentum is really what's getting got at here. And for me, as someone who came to Buddhism secular, and I grew up in a secular home, I didn't even grow up in a religious home at all. I mean, we grew up, I don't want to say we were atheists, but it just was a non-conversation. We didn't talk about religion. It wasn't a thing in our house. Oh, let me see what's being said here. I feel like he might be saying that it is a sort of math equation. Yeah, unwholesome karma might not outweigh the impact of wholesome, and repair can be made at any time. But fully stopping the inertia is hard. I love that. And another one that I've heard is, like in terms of, on the flip side is like, if you've been really training the mind or wherever, whatever the karma is ripening in your experience, if you practice, an unskillful rite, it's like a drop of poison in a vast ocean. And I think it's that same kind of sentiment. And I like that idea a lot. And I think when we view it that way, kind of in a more practical way, then I think it can become more useful for people. Because I think one thing that I find, I think when you say to someone, all you have to do is just think happy thoughts really, really hard all the time, as much as you can, and you can create your own reality. And these are kind of some of the really kind of flippantly thrown around kind of phrases that you'll see in like pop law of attraction books, like it just, and movies are made about this, and if it were that simple, well, we wouldn't all be where we are right now. I wouldn't be, if it were that easy, but again, I'm Buddhist, and for me, I actually, this makes a lot of sense to me practically, and because I try to keep beginner's mind with it, then how I frame this and hold this is the same way that psychologists and sociologists talk about intersectionality. It's exactly the same way. It's like I grew up on a hippie commune where there was a lot of violence, drugs, and sexual abuse. And so there's a lot of, and again, the Buddha talks about this. So there's a lot of things going on there, right? Right. According to all of this, right, that was karmic seeds ripening for me, right? Now, what's interesting about Buddhism, and something that I really love about it, is that the focus in Buddhism, the emphasis in Buddhism, is not the conditions that are ripening. That is just not. That's almost it's almost irrelevant, I would say. Specifically in Buddhism, it's almost completely irrelevant. What's more important is the Eightfold Path, right? What's more important is the backbone of Buddhism, which is a plan of action called the Eightfold Path. Why? This passage says why. And I think sometimes, somebody wrote this in the questions today. They wrote, let's see if I do this question justice. And I wrote them back, and just with my, kind of just saying, wow, I wonder if maybe could frame, maybe ask yourself, maybe question yourself about the way you're questioning your question. I think that's the way I put it, something like that. And I can't remember what the question was exactly, but the way that they had written it, it kind of presupposed that, oh gosh. And I realize that I'm being, I realize right now that I'm contradicting myself, because I'm saying that there is a path. It's called the Eightfold Path, right? But so I hope that you appreciate the contradiction when I say that they were talking about practice as if you had to stay on a track. They said, I used to practice and I fell off track. The Eightfold Path is not like that. Like it's a track and you got to get on it. And if you fall off it, then you're off it. And if you're on it or you're off it, non-duality in Hinduism and Buddhism, it's not this or that, black or what. So, it's more information. It's information. Because I came up the way that I came up, and because I get so easily triggered by people because of my trauma, right? So is it comic seeds ripening? Fine, sure, okay, great. Fine, let's just take this to somebody who's a hardcore atheist. Fine, let's just leave all that out of it. If you grew up the way I did, you're gonna probably have major trauma, and you're gonna be acting from that place, and you could come across as an a-hole as a result, and now people are gonna treat you like that, and blah, 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 right? So there's a certain amount of practicality here. If you don't like the cosmological karma, although you can't remove it from Buddhism, because hey, guess what? It is Buddhism. And that's another way to think about it. Oh, great, so there's more here that you wrote, you wrote. Exactly, the current position on the path is not relevant. Yeah, it is a method of traveling to the ultimate goal. Yeah, and I think that particularly, and again, we just like to talk a lot over here in the West, we talk a lot, we try to figure it out. Well, I'm gonna figure this out. I'm gonna read a whole bunch of books and figure it out with my thinking mind. I'm gonna figure it out with my thinking mind. And I think at a certain level, there's a whole lot in Buddhism that leaves the thinking mind completely out of it for a reason. It's a system, and it's a system for a reason. It's a very much an embodied system, because if we just relied on the mind, right? Sometimes, fabrication, right? The 5 aggregates. I mean, really, it's like. This is why, and I know that we don't always like to hear this, especially in my field, psychology. People in my field really don't like to hear this. I'm just going to say that out loud. They just hate hearing this. But this is a Buddhist view. I'm just going to say this. Your feelings aren't necessarily true for the reasons that we just read. For myriad physiological and psychological reasons. We can't always trust what we're feeling in the moment. Anyway, I feel like I'm going off the rails again, but so this is kind of, again, yeah, we don't get too focused on the weeds here like this, but if you want them, here are the weeds on the comma. Okay, so I'm gonna keep on going here. I looked at the clock and it's 4:44. Hello. I am gonna go ahead and look at, okay. So again, my apologies in advance. I'm gonna do my best with this name. This is Sutta 69. Then, Asibandhakaputa, the herdman, a disciple of the Nigantas, and again, very sorry if I got that wrong, went to the Blessed One, and on arrival, having bowed down to him, sat to one side. As he was sitting there, the Blessed One said to him, Headman, how does Niganta Nadaputa teach the Dhamma to his disciples? Niganta Nataputta teaches the Dhamma to his disciples in this way, Lord. All those who take life are destined for the plane of deprivation, are destined for hell. All those who steal, all those who engage in sexual misconduct, all those who tell lies, are destined for the plane of deprivation, are destined for hell. Whatever one keeps doing frequently, by that is one led to, in brackets, to a state of rebirth. That's how Niganta Nataputta teaches the Dhamma to his disciples. If it's true that whatever one keeps doing frequently, by that is one led, in brackets, to a state of rebirth, then no one is destined for the plane of deprivation or destined to hell in line with Niganta Nataputta's words. What do you think, Hedman? If a man is one who takes life, then taking into consideration time spent doing and not doing, whether by day or by night, which time is more, the time he spends taking life or the time he spends not taking life? The time he spends taking life is less, Lord, and the time he spends not taking life is certainly more. If it's true that whatever one keeps doing frequently, by that is one led to, in brackets, to a state of rebirth, then no one is destined for the plane of deprivation or destined to hell in line with Niganta Nataputta's words. What do you think, Hedman? If a man is one who steals, engages in sexual misconduct, tells lies, then taking into consideration time spent doing and not doing, whether by day or by night, which time is more, the time he spends telling lies or the time he spends not telling lies? The time he spends telling lies is less, Lord, and the time he spends not telling lies is certainly more. If it's true that whatever one keeps doing frequently, by that is one led to, in brackets, to a state of rebirth, then no one is destined for the plane of deprivation or destined to hell in line with Niganta Nataputta's words. There's the case, Hedman, where a certain teacher holds this doctrine, holds this view. All those who take life are destined for the plane of deprivation, are destined for hell. All those who steal, all those who engage in sexual misconduct, all those who tell lies are destined for the plane of deprivation, are destined for hell. A disciple has faith in that teacher, and the thought occurs to him, our teacher holds this doctrine, holds this view. All those who take life are destined for the plane of deprivation, are destined for hell. There are living beings that I have killed. I too am destined for the plane of deprivation, am destined for hell. He fastens on to that view. If he doesn't abandon that doctrine, doesn't abandon that state of mind, doesn't relinquish that view, then as if he were to be carried off, he would thus be placed in hell. Ooh, and then in brackets here, for the next paragraph, the thought occurs to him. Our teacher holds this doctrine, holds this view. All those who steal, all those who engage in sexual misconduct, all those who tell lies are destined for the plane of deprivation, are destined for hell. There are lies that I have told. I too am destined for the plane of deprivation and destined for hell. He fastens on to that view. If he doesn't abandon that doctrine, doesn't abandon that state of mind, doesn't relinquish that view, then, as if he were to be carried off, he would thus be placed in hell. There is the case, Hedman, where a Tathagata appears in the world, worthy and rightly self-awakened, consummate in clear knowing and conduct, well gone, a knower of the cosmos, unexcelled trainer of those to be tamed, teacher of devas and human beings, awakened, blessed. He in various ways criticizes and censures the taking of life, and says, abstain from taking life. He criticizes and censures stealing and says, abstain from stealing. He criticizes and censures indulging in sexual misconduct and says, abstain from sexual misconduct. He criticizes and censures the telling of lies and says, abstain from the telling of lies. A disciple has faith in that teacher and reflects. The Blessed One, in a variety of ways, criticizes and censures the taking of a life and says, abstain from taking life. There are living beings that I have killed to a greater or lesser extent. That was not right. That was not good. But if I become remorseful for that reason, that evil deed of mine will not be undone. So reflecting thus, he abandons right, then the taking of life, and in the future refrains from taking life. This is how there comes to be the abandoning of that evil deed. This is how there comes to be the transcending of that evil deed. In brackets, he reflects. The Blessed One, in a variety of ways, criticizes and censures stealing, sexual misconduct, the telling of lies, and says, abstain from the telling of lies. There are lies I have told to a greater or lesser extent. That was not right. That was not good. But if I become remorseful for that reason, that evil deed of mine will not be undone. So reflecting thus, he abandons right, then the telling of lies, and in the future, refrains from telling lies. This is how there comes to be the abandoning of that evil deed. This is how there comes to be the transcending of that evil deed. There is the case, Headman. Tathagata appears in the world, worthy and rightly, self-awakened. Wait, I feel like, wait a minute. Am I just, where are we? I'm just going to go back to here because I believe this is where I was. So the second to last paragraph on page 168, which begins in brackets, he reflects. The Blessed One, in a variety of ways, criticizes and censures stealing, sexual misconduct, the telling of lies, and says, abstain from the telling of lies. There are lies I have told to a greater or lesser extent. That was not right. That was not good. But if I become remorseful for that reason, that evil deed of mine will not be undone. So reflecting thus, he abandons right then the telling of lies. How'd I do? That was good, right? Thank you, because you're right. I was totally not getting that. I think I'm going to check and see if I got that. I think that's what you meant. Yeah! Teamwork! Okay, so I'm just going to take that passage again. So reflecting thus, he abandons right then. Maybe I'll add my little, he abandons right then and there. Right now, right then. The telling of lies, and in the future refrains from telling lies. This is how there comes to be the abandoning of that evil deed. This is how there comes to be the transcending of that evil deed. Okay, I think that's where I lost my thread. Having abandoned the taking of life, he refrains from taking life. He refrains from stealing. He refrains from sexual misconduct. He refrains from lies. He refrains from divisive speech. He refrains from harsh speech. He refrains from idle chatter. Having abandoned ... covetousness, he becomes uncovetous. Having abandoned malevolence and anger, he becomes one with the mind of no malevolence. Having abandoned wrong views, he becomes one who has right views. That disciple of the Noble Ones, Headman, thus devoid of covetousness, devoid of malevolence, unbewildered, alert, mindful, keeps pervading the first direction, the east, with an awareness imbued with goodwill. Likewise the second, likewise the third, likewise the fourth. Thus above, below, and all around, everywhere, in its entirety, he keeps pervading the all-encompassing cosmos with an awareness imbued with goodwill, abundant, expansive, immeasurable, without hostility, without malevolence, just as a strong, conch trumpet blower can notify the four directions without any difficulty. In the same way, when the awareness release through goodwill is thus developed, thus pursued, any deed done to a limited extent no longer remains there, no longer stays there. That disciple of the Noble Ones keeps pervading the first direction with an awareness imbued with compassion, empathetic joy, equanimity. Likewise the second, likewise the third, likewise the fourth. Thus above, below, and all around, everywhere, in its entirety, he keeps pervading the all-encompassing cosmos with an awareness imbued with equanimity, abundant, expansive, immeasurable, without hostility, the four directions, without any difficulty. In the same way, when the awareness released through equanimity is thus developed, thus pursued, any deed done to a limited extent no longer remains there, no longer stays there. And that's SN 42:8. And this is absolutely lovely. And, I've talked about in the past how I have had 2 experiences in my life. One was not connected to meditation, and one was through a meditation practice that I experienced this, that I had a glimpse of this. And imagining living this way all of the time is mind-blowing to me and remarkable. And I believe that those humans exist. I've certainly been in rooms with people before where they imbue this degree of equanimity. For me and my lot, I'll say, the closest that I can do is to not deny to myself to be honest, to be discerning, to practice the path, to use the supplemental roles of a voice and a teacher, and know that anger does arise in my body, that when something in my present state reminds me of my childhood, that deep within my body is a fight response, that I am not awake. I am not awake. That is why I meditate every day, because I'm not what he's describing here. And I'll just tell you right now, I seriously doubt that I will be here in this lifetime unless I experience some kind of radical grace. And it's 5, and so that means I need to be done, because somebody else might want to hop in here and start blathering away like I've been. So I think I'm going to end it right here, but I just want to say high five. Thank you so much, and thank you for participating too. I really appreciate you. And yay, thank you for that. And yeah, seriously, if anybody ever gets if anybody's new to this server, I think that the way that I'm not a moderator, but I think that the way that it works is that once you've kind of participated in the server for a certain amount of time, then you can start to talk in voice channels and things. And when you've gotten there, then feel free to unmute, and not to worry, I just kind of cut your voice out of the podcast, but I always love to converse, and I'm no pro, okay? I'm just a regular guy who has been practicing this for a long time, and who is quite earnest about it and very passionate about it. So yes, thank you so much for joining me, and I'll see you next time. Be well.